Hello, and welcome to Revizto's 5.15 Updates and New Features webinar. I'm John Saint, and I'll be talking you through a few of the big updates within 5.15. We'll talk on a few of the smaller quality of life improvements and discuss everything else coming with Revizto 5.15. First off, we'll talk about the redesigned scheduler. We'll do a bit of a demo, talk you through a lot of the new features that we have within the scheduler. And then we'll move on to the iPod compatibility, stamp updates, public dashboards, and updated plugin support, which we'll share on screen. And then finally, we'll touch on everything else and how we're going to be communicating it with you with upcoming webinars and other documentation. So to get things started, let's jump into a demo of the new version of the scheduler. Welcome to the Revizto 5.15 Task Scheduler. To access this, just go down to the Windows tab, type in Revizto 5, and you'll see two options here. We've kept the old version of the scheduler so you can revert back for any sort of legacy items, but this is the new version of the scheduler. When you open up, you'll be introduced to the Task tab, which we can interact with. If I click on the Snowden IRC import, it's going to pull up this window on the right. And you'll note the name of this is different to what you're used to. Originally, in the previous versions, the model used to be the name of the task. In this version, you can customize what that task is called, making it easier to filter. You could still revert that back to the model name and just include that in the task name. We have a few options at the top where we can run it directly from the scheduler, even out of schedule. We can duplicate this task and we can export tasks, meaning we can also import. So if you've already got some set up, you can batch these out and then pull them back in. And we can also delete. We're going to click on edit. And then from here, we can modify the task name. We can modify the project that it's linked to. We can then, with an IFC, pick which IFC or which level of the IFC we want to pull in. We can then add an additional model as well. With 5.15, we're no longer limited to one model per task. In terms of IFCs, we can now pull in multiple at the same time. So we could just go in here, add a second model in, and that'll add it to that task. A bit further down, we've got different publishing settings, something you're all familiar with. We've got the same advanced options that come with the IFC export, and then we go into schedule. In schedule, it won't be much different from the previous version. We can just every 2 weeks, every week, custom dates, as you saw before. We can select the days in which it's been exported through. But with 5.15, we can add additional times. So at this point, we've got 12 in the afternoon, and then we've also got 9 p.m. We can then add a third time, fourth time, fifth time, and really customize this and upload models or these IFCs as frequently as you wish. We can then choose whether we want to push this through for the upcoming Saturday or we want to skip this one for the following Saturday. I can just do that now and then specify an end date. There's some additional actions below this, and this is where we start looking at who's notified, what is being notified, and when. At the bottom, you'll see task failed or partially failed, task skipped or cancelled by user, task successfully completed. So you can customize this as you wish, and then you can say who this is being sent to. At default, it's going to be the person that created this task. The command line settings are advanced, but each task created in the task scheduler generates an alias for the command line and a command to run the task in the command line. So something for the advanced user out there, please reach out to us if you want to go into a bit more detail. I'm just going to save that for now, and you see, it takes us back, it saved this out, and it's updated it as required. From the upcoming schedule tab, you'll see the tasks that we created plotted against the calendar. To move through the calendar, we simply go up the top here and use the arrows to jump back and forth. And you'll see with the task that I've created, the end date is only a few weeks down the line. I can jump back to the original date, start date, or jump all the way to the end with the two arrows. We can also filter these out by project. If we've got multiple projects, you can filter those out. And then also by the task type, I've only done publish from Revit, but if you've got multiple file formats, different native softwares being used, you can filter them by the task type. I've also got a search bar in here, and this works across the tasks and also the history. So if I search electrical model, it's going to filter out all those tasks for that electrical model, and I can jump through again, and that filter holds throughout the calendar. Let's close that down. And one thing you'll also note is the skip button. We can go through and skip any of these that we like. If there's a reason that you've a model that's not being updated, maybe it's on a holiday, you can skip these tasks to upload those models. Now if we move into history, we now see what tasks have been done, which ones have run, and the status of those tasks. If we look at the data that we have available to us at the top along the header, you can see when it started, the status, the name, the project, and the task type, and some additional details in here. If we select on a failed, you can see the reasons why it's failed at the very bottom here, but also some additional data in terms of when it was scheduled to start, the delay, ended, and the duration. This also works across success. It gives you that same information, but just tells you that it's been successful at the bottom of the tab. We're now going to jump back into tasks and create our own publish from Revit. So as before, we go to create task, and then we go to the drop down and select where we want to publish from. Something worth noting is with 5.15 of Revizto, you can now schedule model uploads and tasks from Bentley MicroStation, whether that's open roads, open rails, or open buildings. You can now publish in a scheduled way through the task scheduler and the plugin. As before, we still require that initial setup within the plugin itself. So we're going to jump into that now. So in Revit, nothing has changed on the surface level. If we click on Revizto Scheduler and open that one up, this has also got a bit of a revamp and a redesign. This will look slightly different to you if you've not set up a task yet. You'll have a few things in different locations, but it's pretty much the same. We can go in and create a new task. We can select the task name, set the project, run through all the same settings as we did when we were setting up the IFC. Similar before, we've improved the schedule, where we can add multiple times in there, specify end date, and then additional actions and command line settings that we saw within the IFC. We're going to hit cancel because we've already created one. Once we have one created, we can make modifications with the edit task, jump back and forth from there. We can duplicate this out. A use case for this is if you've got one model going to multiple projects. We can also delete this task as well. One button at the bottom worth noting is the Open Revizto Scheduler. So if we click that button, it just jumps us straight to the scheduler. What we've done is built a relationship between our plugins and our scheduler when before they were slightly disjointed. Now you can upload from the plugin and then jump straight to the scheduler, and also make any changes you want to those tasks that you create from the plugin from the scheduler. So if I go into the HVAC model, which is the one we saw in here, we can then go in and make modifications, and this even includes the sheets, which is going to ask me to open up this, and it's going to open up the sheets, and I can select the sheets. If the model's not open, again, it's going to open that model and then pull up that window for you. One thing worth noting in here when you're making these modifications is that now we've got this option to sync Revizto project after task completion, and that's on its default. So now it's synced to the project without you having to go through and actually click the sync button. But you can turn this off and on as you need to. One last task we're going to create for this webinar, and create a new task again. And some of you might have already seen it, but now we already have Clash Automation. So we can schedule out Clash Automation with the scheduler. So if we go to Clash Automation, hit create, we can give this a Clash Automation name, select the project that we want to do the Clash Automation in, pop that down, and then in the Clash tests, we can choose which clash tests we want to do. We could do all of them if we wanted to. We could do it by the selected labels, but we can also do it by the clash tests themselves, and that's what we're going to do here. We're going to add the clash tests, and just with as the same with the Revit model, if you've not got Revizto open, it will open Revizto in the background, and to get this to open up in the scheduler, we can select the two clashes we want to run, and we can go back and customize these as we want. You can select as many as you want, and there's also a little search bar there if you're looking for a specific clash you want to pull out. Actions at the bottom, we can run the clash test, and then we have the option to whether we want to sync to the issue tracker or not. Just as in the application, you can choose to push review clashes only, but you could also push through all the clashes reviewed and not reviewed. As before, we're going to say this is on a Monday. We're going to request the models come through on a Friday. Monday morning, let's say at 7 a.m. before I come to work, I want this clash automation to run once I've got all the new models in. I don't need to do this another time, but we can do that. And then we can do just as we did before, additional actions, send notifications, play with the command line settings, and then save this out. Moving on from the scheduler portion of the webinar, I'm going to talk about some of the smaller updates that are coming with 5.15. I say smaller, but they could be more valuable to you depending on the way you use Revizto. So the first up is iPad borderless support. As you can see from the image, 5.14, we had an upscaled version of the mobile app, which ended up with having panels on each side of the screen. With 5.15, we've improved that to be full screen. So now you can take your iPad out without thinking you're on your iPhone and view the information in both the 3D, 2D, and issue tracker full screen. Next up is stamps. Stamps have improved to include a visual indicator on both the 2D and 3D space. So when you select a stamp, you locate it in the 2D or 3D space, you'll now get a visual indicator to say where it's going to be dropped. No more pasting stamps in the wrong location. An additional item with the stamps is now anything with a markup in a 2D space will be there when you're creating a new version of the stamp or a new stamp completely. You'll be able to have some context of the other markups in that location. A nice quality of life update as well. And I think we all have stakeholders that aren't actually involved in the platform or don't want to get involved in the tool. You can now share your dashboards publicly to those people that want to see a high-level summary of the project without getting stuck in or be invited to the project. Just as you can see on the image, public page enabled. You can share this via their email or with a link. Next up is plugin support. Please review this slide. It talks about mostly the update for 2025 support and a few other quality of life updates. And finally, everything else. Just as with previous versions of Revizto, there's a lot to cover in 5.15 to fit into a 15-minute webinar. The development team have put time and effort into improving the current features, building out new ones, and elevating your time within the platform. To cover every aspect, we'll be sharing the document on screen that details how everything new in Revizto works and how to work with it. Of course, we'll still have webinars covering different aspects, and you can reach out to your local CSM to run through any part you're interested in. Thank you so much for your time. I look forward to seeing you all in the new version of Revizto.